Hi everyone, and welcome on another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. Today we're doing the section of road between West Thumb Geyser Basin, which is right over there, and Fishing Bridge going past Lake Hotel in the process. Please go to our site yellowstonetours.net/map to see a map of the route we're going to be on today. That's yellowstonetours.net/map. We're leaving West Thumb Geyser Basin behind for reasons that I've never fully understood. West Thumb is not one of the more popular geyser basins in Yellowstone. It is, however, my favorite basin. It's right on the shores of the beautiful Yellowstone Lake, and it has a lot of geological significance as well. If you take a look at that site I directed you to, yellowstonetours.net/map, you'll notice the soft purple line. And by the way, all of this over here is part of the West Thumb Geyser Basin. Do you see those people kayaking over there? You can drive along here and just see geysers erupting out of the blue that I never even knew were over here. Anyway, if you take a look at that map, you'll see that there's a soft purple line that basically follows the lower loop of Yellowstone. And that shows us where the caldera is. The caldera is the massive hole in the ground that was left last time the Yellowstone supervolcano erupted, which was about 625,000 years ago. West Thumb, scientists believe, was also created by an explosion, by a gigantic eruption, and it is a caldera as well. So the West Thumb area is a caldera within a caldera. To get to West Thumb Geyser Basin, you'll see on the map, is right at the bottom of Yellowstone's lower loop. If you're driving down, say, towards Grand Teton National Park or the Jackson area, as you leave the southernmost portion of the lower loop, on your left, just where you can turn left to go towards Fishing Bridge, right on your left there is West Thumb Geyser Basin. And similarly, coming up from Jackson Hole or Grand Teton, or having crossed the Rockefeller Parkway, just before you run into the Grand Loop Road, you will see West Thumb Geyser Basin, this time on your right hand side. This drive that we're on now doesn't have a lot of thermal features on it. It doesn't have the mountains right next to the road. It's not an area where one would expect to see massive amounts of wildlife, as you might in the Hayden Valley or in the Lamar Valley. But as with so much of Yellowstone, you never really know what you're going to see. We could run into moose, although that's very unlikely, and we could also run into a grizzly bear if we get lucky. You never know just what you're going to see. This is, however, a really beautiful stretch of road because it follows Yellowstone Lake almost all the way up to Fishing Bridge. And the lake, as you can see, is just so blue, especially on a nice sunny day. The mountains in the background there still have snow on them. But there's not going to be an awful lot for me to tell you about, because we're going to see lake, and more lake, and we're going to see a lot of trees as well. I can tell you a little bit about Yellowstone Lake, though. It's the largest body of water, of course, inside Yellowstone National Park. It is also the second largest alpine lake in the world. In other words, the second largest lake at altitude in the world, and it's the largest high altitude lake in the United States. It is about 7,700 feet above sea level and covers approximately 136 square miles or so, and it has about 110 miles of shoreline. Yellowstone Lake should be home to lake trout, and it is. Excuse me, it should be home to cutthroat trout. And a problem is that an invasive species known as lake trout for a long time took over Yellowstone Lake, which had an adverse effect on other species, not only the cutthroat trout, which the lake trout used to like to eat up. No one is really certain where the lake trout came from, but they're definitely an invasive species in Yellowstone Lake. It's possible that they came from the nearby Shoshone Lake or perhaps Lewis Lake. It's believed that the invasive lake trout arrived about 25 years ago, and because they're bigger and more aggressive than the cutthroat trout, they started to dominate life in the lake. I mentioned that it had an adverse effect not only on the lake trout, on the cutthroat trout, but also on other species as well that rely on the cutthroat trout for their diet. Grizzly bears, for example, like to eat cutthroat trout, but they're not wild about eating lake trout. In addition, otter and ospreys thrive when there are cutthroat trout about. So even though it may seem like looking for a needle in a haystack, trying to get rid of the lake trout, that's exactly what the authorities decided to do. And they tried various methods of doing this. They at one stage considered vacuuming up the lake trout. They considered electrifying or electrocuting them, amongst other methods. But what they eventually landed up doing was using gill nets, which are so despised elsewhere, where conservationists feel that they shouldn't be used to the extent that they are in the oceans. But scientists here deployed gill nets in such a way that for the most part they would really only affect the lake trout by having holes that were small enough theoretically for the cutthroat trout to swim through, and they also deployed the gill nets at depths where they would be more likely to catch the cutthroat rather than the lake trout. And this, surprisingly enough, has been very, very successful. In recent years, and I'm filming this in 2020, in recent years there's been fewer and fewer lake trout being pulled out, and it is believed that about, I forget the exact figure, I think it was about 3 million of the lake trout have been removed so far. And at the moment there are not as many lake trout being pulled out as there were before, which is a sign that perhaps there's not as many lake trout as there used to be, and the campaign is being successful. The Park Service and the scientists and biologists working with them also found out where the lake trout were breeding, and they wanted to get rid of the lake trout eggs. And one way that they came up with was to take the dead lake trout that they had caught in the gill nets, drop them over the side of the boat, and they would then land on top of the eggs and smother them because there'd be a lack of oxygen in the water. I remember going to one of the meetings that companies, tour operators such as ours, are invited to by the Park Service, who do such a great job of educating the tour companies and various other concessionaires and people who have permits to operate in Yellowstone. And one of the fish scientists told us that story, and I said to him, well, how do you know that the dead fish that you drop over the side are going to actually land on the place where the eggs are? And he gave me this withering look, and he said, well, divers guide them down. So I guess there's an answer for everything. But scientists then decided that this way of killing the breeding eggs was not ideal, because by adding that quantity of fish into the water, they were upsetting the natural equilibrium. So they came up with a type of pellet instead, which they have been using to kill the lake trout eggs. We're still driving around Yellowstone Lake, and we've got quite a bit further to go until we get to Fishing Bridge. You'll notice that there are no mileage posts, there are no signs in the park except at the start of a section of a road telling you how far it is to the next break in the road, if you like, in this case Fishing Bridge or Lake Hotel. Look at these snags over here. This is always something that is so beautiful about Yellowstone. The dead trees called snags. It's been such a beautiful day in Yellowstone. There's been any number of people out swimming in the water or wading, and that's what all these people over here are doing. There's a lot more of this to come on this section of the road, so feel free to advance your video if you like. If I come across anything of interest, anything to tell you, I will, but otherwise just enjoy the scenery. Normally when you come fishing in Yellowstone, you're fishing on the rivers, the policy is catch and release. You catch the fish, maybe take a picture of it, and then you release it back into the water. Here in Yellowstone Lake, though, if you catch a lake trout, by law, you actually have to keep it. You have to pull it out of the water and kill it. Across again. I'm sorry that the picture was shaky a while ago. There's a phone which somehow has a signal, and I just want to turn it off. Okie doke, grabbed it this time. You'll find that for the most part you won't have a cell phone signal just about all of Yellowstone. You will have a bit of a signal depending on who your carrier is at the main areas like Old Faithful and where we were at West Thumb. There is a signal drifting over from somewhere Mammoth Hot Springs. You have a signal, and every now and again the signal will just happen to occur where you are, which is what that noise was on the phone sitting next to me. But it's turned off now, so it shouldn't disturb us again. are some pretty neat picnic areas off to our right in several places, so you can sit alongside the lake and eat your picnic lunch. And it's not as well populated as other areas in the park. It's not as well trafficked, so it can be a great place to come and eat lunch or sit and have your supper. Here from West Yellowstone, and there was a lot of traffic being the middle of July, even though this is the coronavirus outbreak here in the US. And yet over here on the far east side of Yellowstone, there's hardly any cars at all. you're lucky enough to come here in the spring, just after the park has opened, you may see the lake still covered in ice. Just about all of the lake gets covered in ice, about 3 feet thick, maybe 0.9 meters thick, except in areas where there's hot springs or thermal features that are covered by just a shallow layer of water. For the rest of it, this lake is just about all solid ice. That road that we passed isn't really anything special. It just gets you a lot closer to the lake for a while. This is where that road that I mentioned to you previously goes in or comes out, depending on which way you started. And I'm just opening my windows. We come over this bridge. This is the marina. And you'll see that there are some boats there, not as many as there normally are. And as you might imagine, because of what you before, and the thickness of the ice here, you have to get your boat out of the water in the fall sometime, not to mention, of course, that the park closes to regular traffic for much of the winter, and you can only come in here, not to this part of the park, but to various other parts of the park on a guided snow coach or snowmobile tour. On other videos, I describe how the north entrance is the only entrance that stays open on a year-round basis. Although the road from Mammoth Hot Springs to the northeast entrance also stays open, and the reason for that is that the people who live in the small communities of Crook City and Silvergate, which are just on the other side of the northeast entrance, really have no way to get out of town apart from coming back into the park and coming through Yellowstone, because on the other side of Crook City they are very much snowed in until the late spring. So the road has to be kept open between the northeast entrance and Mammoth, and then from Mammoth up to the north entrance. See a sign of us ahead of us saying lake area. To the right, that means the Lake Hotel and the various other buildings around the Lake Hotel. The Lake Hotel really is one of the grand hotels in the national park system. And then just a little bit up this road is Fishing Bridge. And Fishing Bridge is where you would turn right or east to take the road to the east entrance of Yellowstone, and from the east entrance of Yellowstone you would continue on to Cody, Wyoming. Fishing Bridge is so called because in the old days you used to be allowed to stand on the bridge and fish. There was some wonderful cutthroat trout fishing there, but not surprisingly the area became overfished. The number of cutthroat dwindled until they just about disappeared, and nowadays you're not allowed to fish off. There's some elk down there. Nowadays you're not allowed to fish off Fishing Bridge anymore. Although it is a great place to go and stand and admire the views. And just on the other side of the lake is where the road will take you from Fishing Bridge towards the east entrance. If we were to continue straight, we would get up to the Hayden Valley and then Grand Canyon of the Yellowstone, and the road to the right once again leads you off to Yellowstone's east entrance. Thank you for joining me on another one of our virtual Yellowstone tours. If you enjoy our virtual Yellowstone tour series, please consider giving us a thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. Otherwise, I hope to see you in Yellowstone.